Hello! Today, I've got my first full-length video, covering a topic I hope to make a series out of with this as a pilot. We will be covering and touring the Metro Orange Line Bus Rapid Transit Project, a recently completed BRT line servicing Minneapolis and the southern suburban metropolitan area. The Orange Line is part of the Metro Transit Service, the primary transit operator of the Twin Cities metropolitan area, and it's color-coded and lettered rapid transit services. Metro Transit is responsible for the state's 2 light rail lines and other existing bus rapid transit lines. To give an overview of the history of the Orange Line, we must turn the clock over a century back to when passenger rail serviced the greater Minnesota area. The Minneapolis, Northfield, and Southern Railway was the passenger rail corridor of this area. These rail lines became known colloquially and unofficially as the Dan Patch Lines, which serve today's Minneapolis, Crystal, Golden Valley, St. Louis Park, Edina, Bloomington, Richfield, Savage, Lakeville, and terminating finally in Northfield. This passenger rail history is quite extensive and deserves a video of its own, but to keep it brief, passenger service unfortunately ended in the 20th century. These rail corridors have still existed, however, and provided freight service in the region to this date to all of these cities. Over the decades, citizens of Minnesota have proposed to bring back the Dan Patch Corridor as a passenger rail service, be that commuter, light rail, or some other passenger train method. In 1998, a study commissioned by Minnesota Department of Transit to survey potential of commuter rail proposed the Dan Patch Corridor as a Tier 1 corridor with a high chance of success. Frustratingly, funding for further study of the project was banned by 2 state senators in 2002, putting a temporary and significant halt to the proposal of rail service in this corridor. Immediately after getting shot down, though, in 2003, the state put forth a study mandate to the Minnesota Department of Transit for a bus rapid transit service instead along the I-35W corridor. Express bus services have existed on this freeway corridor since the 70s, but as congestion and development increased, so did the traffic these buses faced. Designs of overlapping freeways, arterial stroads, and detours made the express bus services constrained by the infrastructure they had to pass through. The 535 Express bus line was the predecessor to the Orange Line, a weekday-only express bus service running along the same corridor up to downtown Minneapolis. Key improvements over the decades were made to the service, such as the beginning of the Lake Street and 35W station roughly 2 to 3 decades ago. High-occupancy vehicle lanes were built in 2007 along the 35W corridor in order to reduce congestion and traffic faced by these buses and other high-occupancy vehicles. A median station was also constructed on 46th Street and 35W, further increasing service of this express line. The state laid the groundwork for bus rapid transit service over these decades, and in 2010 the line was revealed in the 2030 Transportation Policy Plan. After collecting funding from counties and city agencies, by November 2016 preliminary designs of the stations were completed and open to public comment. With Federal Transit Authority approval, the Orange Line began construction in 2017, despite a lack of committed federal funding. The construction began as a part of Minnesota Department of Transportation's larger downtown to crosstown road construction project on I-35W. In November 2018, the Orange Line secured $74 million in federal funding. This was the last portion of the funding to be secured for the $150.7 million project. A groundbreaking ceremony for construction was held in July 2019, and the Orange Line began service on December 4th of 2021. The Orange Line runs from downtown Minneapolis and terminates at Burnsville, heart of the city station, for a total of 17 miles. Stations exist at various points along downtown Minneapolis: 35W and Lake Street, 35W and 46th Street, 76th Street and Knox Ave, 66th Street and 35W, American Boulevard and Knox Ave, 35W and 98th Street Station, and Burnsville, heart of the city, in Burnsville Parkway and 35W. Each station serves as a routing point for various local bus routes and provides amenities including bike parking, benches, real-time bus arrival information, heating, trash, and recycling bins, a station marker, and an information kiosk. energy-efficient LED lighting is used at each station. All stations are Americans with Disabilities Act accessible and include higher curbs to make it easier to board the bus. There is also a textured warning strip on the edge of the platform for passenger safety. In some locations, new sidewalks have been added to better connect the stations to the surrounding neighborhoods. Now with all that out of the way, it's time to finally see what the Orange Line is like in practice. I started my trip at Knox Ave and American Boulevard, the major arterial strode and economic corridor of Bloomington. These stations are located at a site filled with car dealerships which is undergoing continuous and expansive redevelopment, with several apartments and mixed-use buildings next to and nearby these stations. Already, the Orange Bus Line is being used as an incentive for transit-oriented redevelopment that prioritizes walkability in mixed-use infrastructure. After missing the first bus, I waited 30 minutes for the next northbound bus to arrive. This is a long time for a BRT service between buses, but this is unfortunately due to a bus driver shortage constraining run times for the opening months of service, and these intervals are only this long on weekends. Weekday buses currently run anywhere from as short as 5 minutes to 15-minute intervals instead, though I'm just happy this is now operating on weekends in the first place, compared to the 5:35 line it replaced. So I put these stations to the test on a bitter 10-degree Fahrenheit or -12 in Celsius winter evening. I spent my wait at the shelters, warming up my hands on the heaters and paying for my ticket. The Orange Line Bus Rapid Transit operates with the same exact station and payment layout as the light rail station lines, wherein, what I'm assuming to be an Android-based touchscreen payment consoles lets you select different ticket types and services for connecting local buses beyond just Orange Line buses, but also discounts for different groups of people, of course. There is also a go-to pass option for the card payment system. Pricing varies based upon time of day. Rush hour peaks are most expensive, unfortunately. After some time waiting, my bus arrived. A very nice 60-foot articulated New Flyer XD60. These buses have wide entrances, close boarding to the curbs, and an exterior and interior design that closely resembles the aesthetic and layout of Metro's light rails. Right away, I could tell this was a stark contrast to the 40-foot 535 Express buses, and unlike any Metro bus I had experienced before this point. As we approached northbound to the next station across, I also took note of one of the line's biggest benefits, the Knox Ave Tunnel. Before this, the 535 Express buses would need to route all the way over to Penn Avenue, a major Stroad junction, and would be a routine key bottleneck to the express service and add upwards of 10 minutes of time to the journey minimum from traffic and navigation. I remember experiencing the frustration of sitting through these multiple lanes of car traffic, just to route over gigantic interstates bisecting the cities, and thinking that there has to be a better way to do this. Thankfully, the brilliant minds at Metro Transit have taken a bold step to tunnel directly under Interstate 494, creating a bus-only roadway and dedicated pedestrian plus cycle path through this well-lit tunnel to reach the stations at 76th Street and Knox Avenue. As the spring and summer months approach, this tunnel is no doubt going to be a huge safety benefit to everybody crossing between Richfield and Bloomington as a pedestrian or cyclist who no longer have to cut around through busy and dangerous freeway overpasses and arterial stroads to cross between these cities. The way this tunnel looks also very much reminds me of the tunnel in Minneapolis. After finally entering 35W from 76th Street, we approached the 66th Street station in Richfield. These are connected by dedicated bicycle paths and sidewalks that stretch throughout all of Richfield, making for an accessible and convenient stop. After a brief stop there, I rode the Orange Line up to the next and possibly greatest stations along the line, 46th and Lake Street stations, the latter of which I will be coming back to. The buses operate on high occupancy vehicle lanes for most of the highway travel. There are dedicated bus lanes and entrances for these buses to enter and exit these stations, which are built along the highway median of 35W. As we approached downtown Minneapolis, I couldn't help but enjoy myself as the bus zipped past the stretches of multiple lanes of packed car traffic, both directions on 35W. Maybe those high occupancy vehicle lanes do the job just fine after all. And I'm sure there was at least some envy from the drivers doing a fraction of the speed the bus was cruising at. Dedicated bus-only entrances bring the buses back to street grade from the freeway and service the final leg of the journey. Several bus stops that connect and transfer to different bus lines downtown reach a terminus on Washington Avenue and 3rd Street. I got off of the bus at this final stop and walked the short distance over to the terminus for the southbound Orange Line on Marquette Ave and 2nd Street. Once again, I waited a little less than 30 minutes for the very same bus that I took northbound to return and bring me down to the Lake Street station, where I stopped to tour. Lake Street and 35W station is the largest station on the Orange Line and one of the most significant upgrades of this project. Walkability is notoriously uncomfortable for freeway overpasses anywhere, but especially so in the case of the state's busiest freeway corridor and the busy Midtown neighborhood of Minneapolis converging here. The station entrances on either side of Lake Street to the topside towering glass bus platform give the space a presence, which in itself is a statement. That statement being one of reclaiming car-centric infrastructure, investing and transforming areas to make communities more walkable and accessible for everyone. The interior of this station is no less impressive, with plenty of heated waiting space, payment centers, even Metro go-to pass vending machines and lifts, plus stairs, of course, for people to reach the upper level. Topside, you get a great view of the surrounding Midtown and Minneapolis skyline. The waiting decks are wide and reach close to buses to make boarding comfortable. The station I watched being constructed for years, feeling like this surreal huge addition to the freeway I couldn't access before, but being able to freely walk around up to and watch freeway vehicles pass is even more surreal. For a bus station, this experience is as close to a light rail line a freeway running transit service could feel like. After waiting in the nice heated station for another 30 minutes for the next southbound bus to arrive, I reflected upon how successful this project is after waiting for many months and years, and if it will serve as a foundation for growth and future development. I thought about the experiences I had before through the 535 line, and for as reliable as it could be, how insane of an upgrade this was. Between all-week frequent service, primary dedicated operating space, and priority traffic signals, 100% articulated buses, and station layouts and services copy-pasted from the light rail stations, this feels like a solid transit project. I arrived back where I started, and continued to think on the potential for the Orange Line. Doing further research for this video, I discovered information on future Metro Transit expansions, and a comprehensive amount of city plans which focus on the Orange Line as a key development incentive for redesigning cities like Bloomington and Burnsville with walkable, bikeable, dense, transit-oriented development along where this BRT serves. Cities have already acted upon making the surrounding areas easier to walk and bike to, improving safety and accessibility for these stations. This is an increasingly important step in reversing the car-centric developments of American infrastructure and redesigning our cities to be safer and more livable for everyone. It seems I'm not the only one who agrees with this either. Much coverage on this bus line in the press and beyond seems to bring an overall bipartisan support of energy. I'm not the only former 535 Express user who can feel the time being saved and the huge upgrades made. Due to copyright standards and fair use, I cannot share publications, or at least what I hope is still considered fair use, and instead will link them in the description below. However, I will paraphrase and quote sections of an article in the Minnesota Post by Bill Lendecki, I apologize if I'm butchering that, which makes a bold claim. 3 reasons why the new Orange Line is the best suburban transit project yet. There are limitations to a freeway-based transit line, but the Orange Line makes the best of them, and I would be inclined to mostly agree with him. Bill opens up with the point that Nobody plans on opening a big transit project during a pandemic, but that's what happened back in December when Metro Transit unveiled the new Orange Line Bus Rapid Transit, taking you from end to end in only 35 minutes, even during rush hour. For Twin Cities Transit, that's fast. However, where I mostly disagree with him is when he states, "My biggest Orange Line gripe is its commitment to the new park and ride at 98th Street. Transit planners force buses to take a 5-minute detour away from the freeway to circle the lot and make it more convenient for hypothetical downtown commuters, so they don't have to walk a few blocks across the interstate bridge. It's a waste of people's time." The 98th Street station is a park and ride station and an inconvenient detour, yes, but the upgrades were absolutely warranted. This station is served by a major number of local bus routes for Bloomington and a key corridor of the city's mixed-use zoning and density. Before the Orange Line upgrades were made, the station was separated from the freeway exit ramp by chain link fence, an underutilized space which really solidified the park and ride feel. By bringing the Orange Line to 98th Street Station, they eliminated the fence and connected this whole station area flush with the exit ramp. This station is also a massively important part of Bloomington's redevelopment plans for their other major economic strode corridor, Lyndale Avenue, which will get a video of its own. However, I do have my problems with the Orange Line project. Waiting times being limited as they are is not necessarily a fault of their own. A lack of benches, though, and seating options at some stations is absolutely a design choice. I understand the anti-homeless reasoning behind it, but I disagree completely, and think that the benefits of seating at a station for everyone should not be ignored, especially when these stations are following so many Americans with Disability Act standards already. My only other main issue, though, is that this is still not 100% dedicated bus lanes and routing. Though this does use some important key bus-only corridors, the majority of the route runs on high-occupancy vehicle lanes and in city streets. But this has potential to change and is not entirely the fault of Metro Transit either. Interstate 35W is a car-centric freeway corridor, with inconvenient development patterns, ramps, exits, entrances, and other tricky layouts that make planning transit along this corridor fundamentally challenging. That's why I can understand that this route was not made into a light rail line, at least, not yet. As this route is upgraded, high-occupancy vehicle lanes can be swapped or moved out to the next lanes over, and center lanes can become 100% bus only. Exits, entrances, and other tricky features can be redesigned and streamlined to make the experience even more rapid and separated from regular traffic. In the future, I can see the Orange Line eventually becoming a light rail line once these improvements are made to make implementing trains on this corridor possible. My conclusions are that the Metro Orange Line is a solid bus rapid transit service. It may be debatable on if this is true BRT, but I think it counts more than enough to serve at raising the bar for bus transit. It's an incredibly bold and challenging step to take, no less during a global pandemic, but a commendable transit improvement that will continue to make the lives of Twin Cities Metro residents less car-centric and more sustainable for the years to come. Thank you all for watching this video. I apologize for any information I may have missed, including a tour of the Burnsville and 98th Street stations, but I can attest that these stations are just as good from my own experience, just not caught on camera. This kind of longer content is a first for me though, and I want to continue making content like this, covering the transit and history of Minnesota, as well as what incredible potential the future holds for this state's transit network. Sources and references will be linked down below. Take care, everybody, and goodbye.